Hey, what's going on guys? Welcome back to Lucky Bounce. Today we are reviewing the Serious Player Only Game 1 Low. This is the low top version of Serious Player Only's Game 1 line, but from my understanding the low is very technically different and, in terms of weight and just general build, a lot different than the mid top and the high. So I can't really speak for those. This is the only shoe that I have the actual experience with. But if anyone is curious about those models, I can try them out. Just let me know. With that being said, let's get started with the review. Okay, so I've been wearing this shoe for about 7 months now. I've been playing in it and practicing in it. And I've got to say it's probably my favorite or maybe second favorite shoe that I've ever worn, but it's the one I'm going with right now for reasons I'll get into later. It retails for about $180, but depending on when you're trying to buy it and the colorway, I think you can get it on sale for around $148, which I honestly think is a pretty fair price in terms of retail price for high-tier basketball shoes. But when you compare it with, some really high-performance models like the Li-Ning Gamma or the Way 10, which I think the mid-top goes for around $225 and the low top for about $200 flat. $180 to $148 is honestly a steal, I think, for the performance you get out of these shoes. But with that being said, embarrassingly enough, I have actually already bought 3 pairs of these shoes. I started off buying the Flower C colorway because I wasn't a huge fan of the black and blue that came with the original Jordan Kilgannon launch, which, if you don't know, Jordan Kilgannon is one of the best pro dunkers of all time, and he actually collaborated with Serious Player Only to basically create the low top version of this shoe, which is why it's so much lighter and has, a bit different tech compared to the mid top and the high top. But once they dropped the Lucky colorway, obviously I had to buy that. And I actually just bought a 3rd pair, which is on the way, the new Philly colorway, because my volleyball club's colors are red, white, and blue. And, I was like, well, I gotta get that. But yeah, jumping into the actual technical review, we're gonna start off with the weight, which is, one of the biggest selling points of this shoe, and I think for good reason. This shoe is extremely light, coming in at around 353 grams for a men's size 10.5, which is definitely one of the lightest shoes I've ever worn. I mentioned the Li-Ning Gamma ones earlier, which before this shoe were probably my favorite shoe I've ever worn. But yeah, the Li-Ning Gammas are extremely light. That's kind of their whole thing. And I'd say these are around that same weight where it's very noticeable just in hand, like holding one of these and then holding practically any other basketball shoe, but especially a heavier model like any version of LeBron's. Like, it's just apparent in hand, but definitely on foot too. It really just feels almost, people have said barefoot. I would kind of agree with that. Obviously, you're still gonna feel like you're wearing a shoe, but it definitely doesn't feel caged. Like, it feels like you are able to move your feet like quicker, if that makes sense. I don't know if that's scientifically true, but that's how it feels playing in these. Yeah, moving on to the traction, they've got this SPS resin-based tire tread pattern, which I really like. I think it performs excellently, and it definitely allows you that kind of peace of mind knowing that you're able to change directions and stop quickly. And I mentioned that SPS resin base because that is part of where a lot of the weight gets cut, as it's a decent amount lighter than most rubber-based outsoles. I will say there is no audible squeak if that's something you care about. I don't think that really indicates or affects performance at all, but if that's something you care about, I guess that's, important to know. The only issue I'll say with the traction on the shoe is it does pick up a little bit of dust. You can see there's some dirt already just from, the 7 months I've been playing in it, but, a quick wipe normally gets rid of that, and it really doesn't impede on the actual performance of the shoe as a whole. But yeah, I would say the traction is definitely my second favorite thing about this shoe. The weight and the traction together just create this super responsive setup where it really feels like your movement is purely up to you and not dictated at all by the thing on your feet. So now moving into, honestly, my personal most important thing I look for in a shoe, the bounce and the cushion. And the reason I pair these together is because I feel like they kind of impact each other. Some shoes have got really great cushioning setups, but that kind of makes it less responsive on the bounce. And some shoes are super bouncy, but they're too rigid and don't give you enough impact protection to actually support that bounce. So I feel like these two kind of go hand in hand, and that's why I've looped them together in the review. But these shoes, I think, strike a really good balance between those two. A big thing about the Serious Player Only brand is they have these replaceable midsoles, which basically creates the entire shoe. This is the cushion and bounce setup in the shoe, and you can buy different insoles on the Serious Player Only website depending on what you're looking for in the shoe. So if you take it out, you see that's basically the entire shoe. Now you've got a lot of bend in the toe. And the Quick 2.0 is the new midsole that they've put in this model specifically, and it is a really good performer. It is a little more plush than I like in a midsole, which is why I decided to go with the explosive midsole, which I think is a bit heavier and a bit more rigid, but I found it also helps my foot fit in the shoe better. For reference, I have very flat arches and pretty wide toes, which is another reason I'll go into later in the fit why I like this shoe. But I found that the explosive midsole just helps my heel sit a little deeper in the shoe, and I think I prefer the bounce setup with that midsole. But you definitely can't go wrong with the Quick 2.0. It's a little bit lighter, and it still gives you a lot of that bounce, a lot of that responsiveness. You can just see, like, kind of feeling it around. It's a very malleable shoe while still giving you a lot of feedback and bounce. So I really like the bounce in this shoe. You know, as a shorter outside, that's something that's really important to me. And this shoe is able to give you that super lightweight setup, that good traction without compromising too much on the weight or the bounce. Yeah, something that's super important to me, and this shoe definitely achieves that balance really well. It gives you this super lightweight setup with great traction while still having really good bounce and really good cushion, where, you know, I was able to play 5 straight matches this weekend and I didn't come out for a single point, and I've just got a light pain in my knees. And as someone who's dealt with knee pain in the past, that is really big for me. So I would definitely recommend these if you're looking for something lightweight that'll actually get you in the air and be able to handle that force coming down. In terms of court feel, you know, I'm not someone who really obsesses over that, but I really have not noticed any issues in terms of court feel with this shoe. You are fairly low to the ground. If you look like this part in the outsole here, this is like how high you are off the ground. So you're pretty low to the ground while still getting the bounce and cushion I mentioned earlier. And a big thing I really like in this shoe is I feel like with some shoes, the insole kind of, it feels like your foot rolls over the insole, and like when you're trying to make lateral movements, it just feels a little not steady, like especially if you're higher up off the ground. I've noticed that specifically with shoes like the Jordan 36s, where you've got that cushion strobel and like high heel lift. Like, it's great for bounce, but you just really lose a lot of the feel you get on foot. But with this shoe, I do not have that issue. It really feels like I can, you know, move my feet however I want to, if that makes sense. You know, I mentioned earlier that it kind of feels barefoot just because of the light weight, and that kind of still applies to the court feel. You know, you get a really intimate relation with the ground. In terms of fit, this is probably the biggest reason that this shoe beat out other top performers in terms of bounce and cushion, because this shoe fits my specific feet very nicely. You know, I'm not sure if this is for everyone, but for me specifically, this shoe and my feet work very well together. So as I mentioned earlier, I have wide feet and flat arches, and if you just look at the bottom of the shoe, you can tell how wide the toe box is. It's also pretty apparent from the top. This shoe just is very wide foot friendly. You can see the toe box is very rounded as opposed to the pointed ends you get with like stuff like the Way 10 Low, where it's kind of trying to force your foot into a different shape. This shoe kind of allows you to just force your foot into a different shape. This shoe actually allows your foot that kind of room in the toe to actually bend and move the way that my feet prefer to. And I found that it helps a lot. I don't get as much arch pain with these shoes unless I tie them too tight. But Another thing I really like about this shoe is that there isn't some aggressive heel counter, you know, like in the Li-Ning Gammas. I loved the weight, I loved the traction, everything. They were a little too narrow, and also they had a carbon fiber counter shank in the heel, which maybe for some people that's good. For me, it really irritated my Achilles, and that was a really detrimental factor in the performance of that shoe for me, even though they excelled so well in other areas. So this shoe basically for me served as a upgrade from the Li-Ning Gamma in that regard, while still at least maintaining, maybe not improving on, stuff like the weight, bounce, and cushion. This shoe just is able to accomplish that all for me. And that is really the big reason that these are my shoe of choice as of now. Yeah, if you have any other questions about this shoe, I'd love to answer them if you leave them in the comments below. Or if there's any other shoes you want me to review, I have a lot. If there's any you saw in my tier list video you'd like a deeper review on, I'd love to give you that. Or if there's shoes I don't have, I can try to look into them and maybe give you guys a more in-depth review. So yeah, just let me know what you're looking for. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.